Salaam Alaykum. This is Sheikh Ibrahim, and today I would like to continue a conversation that got started about why this Taylor Swift phenomenon is what it is, which brought up all kinds of other ethno-anthropological views of human culture, and why there's a tendency to want to idolize and worship personalities that have made the news today. It's not necessarily Sufi in its specific subject matter, but I thought it was something interesting. Are you saying like Trump is like Loki?
A bit like Loki, but more like the guy in Falstaff
Yeah.
in Henry V. He's more like that. He's the worse he gets, the more interesting he is, and the more popular he is. So Falstaff's a very amoral character, but he's one of the most popular characters in Shakespeare because it's entertaining to watch someone do all the wrong things.
So it's kind of opposite guy.
Yeah. I think that's why no matter how bad he gets, he doesn't lose his supporters because there's some sort of vicarious enjoyment of the power of I'm going to do what I want.
Okay, so this is the Joker.
More like the Joker, yeah. More like the Joker, yeah. The funny thing about Trump is he's that vice thing. It's sex and drugs and rock and roll and not rock and roll, but sex and drugs and money and power, like all those things that all the naffs. Like he just sort of he's playing that first level naffs guy.
Yes.
It's all about me. It's all about what I want. I'm just going to step on everybody else because why shouldn't I,
Okay, so as opposite guy, the trickster, the Joker, we love that because we want to be like that and we can't.
Yeah, exactly. It's always more fun when you're on stage playing the bad guy because it's kind of you release all that energy that you normally repress because for socialization. So he's kind of letting the shadow out of the box.
Yeah, we broke Pandora's box and the taboos are all coming out.
That's right. Which
Fantastic.
in the end may be a healthy thing for the society because he's a good mirror of the shadow of the current society.
Well, it makes everybody think, well, what is democracy and when does what are the limits of it?
Yeah, yeah. And how do you fight somebody without getting down to their level as well? That's always the challenge with those kind of people. And that's, like you say, the Joker, that's exactly what happened in Dark Knight was all about. How do you fight someone who wants you to fight?
And not interested in an outcome per se.
No, it's not rational. They're not looking for a particular thing. They're looking for the fight.
It's almost like altruistic evil.
Well, they're not motivated, like he says in The Dark Knight. Some people they're not interested in money or power per se. Like Donald Trump is, but I think he's more interested in having the fight, having the battle, being on the stage. But it just reminded me when you're saying like there's these people that we kind of look up to in a positive way, Princess Diana or whatever. But then there's also people that kind of take on the negative as well, but in a larger than life kind of way.
Yeah, I think you're right that something that it's kind of got what would you call it? I'm thinking of like gravity or magnetic pull that the nets on a more population expanded group of people become entranced with. Because like I was talking about with Taylor Swift, it's an essence. It's like a human.
It's an archetype.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why throughout human culture we have these gods and goddesses that are portrayed in sculpture and art and dance and stories because they represent aspects, some of them that we want to hide, but some of them we want to elevate. And I just find that so interesting that we don't think that way, that we think, well, we just love Taylor Swift. Yeah, Alamin was
not
talking
analyzed. Yeah.
No. Yeah, but looking at it like ethno-anthropologically, it's a pan-human
Mm.
desire to see the essences portrayed by somebody to help us understand them.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's like Joan of Arc appears and everybody that's an aspect of Allah. We can see it clearly, we're gonna follow that because that's a shining light, like that we can, let's go kill English people. It's funny how even though there's an aspect of the essence there, and I think that's the problem is with celebrities run into this problem so often is that they identify with the mask and then they get lost in it. Michael Jackson's like a good example, I think, where you
Mm.
see the human being get screwed up by the mask, by the act, and turn into something mentally ill, obviously. And maybe that's sort of part of that hubris humility journey that we all have to go on there, where we can temporarily express aspects of the law, but not in a complete way. We're always incomplete. It's the contrast between that expression of an aspect, quality of the divine versus the reality of being limited is a hard thing, I think, for a human being to grapple with.
History of acting way back was putting on the mask,
Mm-hmm.
but the more important part is taking off the mask. This is what I think good actors are able to do. You need to be able to put it on and take it off. One example of not being able to take it off was Peter Sellers.
Mm.
Peter Sellers had so many problems not being able to take off his mask. He could only be one of the characters that he played and did not know what to do if he took the mask off. It was too hard. It got too
This
hard.
reminds me of the Robert Downey Jr. character in Tropic Thunder.
Yes,
At the end, his makeup is like running off. The black face he put on, and I think I might be nobody.
that's great.
And he's
That's
like,
brilliant.
I don't break character till we do the DVD commentary.
Yes. So in comparison, we have what Alamin was talking about. He said Melbourne is completely taken over by the Swifties. Girls are wearing everything that she does, and all this merchandise is coming out.
Hmm.
Of course.
But
So
apparently, she like affects the GDP of a country whenever she visits because it's like economically, it's just such a huge impact.
yes, it's a massive industry.
Yeah.
And to me, the
If only the
how
music was really good.
if yeah, well,
It's not terrible. It's just not the Beatles.
no, it's not good music. It's
It's
just
okay. It's
it passes.
it's shallow. It's kind of hooky, some of it. Yeah, it's not a lot of depth there.
So what I was talking about with Alamin was what she's done is brilliant. She has created, and this is in magic. You have a spell.
Mm,
Spell meaning that you have to get the letters in the right order to make the word. In this case,
It's a
through magic.
recipe. Yeah,
Exactly. Yeah, it's a
yeah.
menu. So you take your bits one at a time and get them lined up in the right order, and you have, in this case, what I was talking about is the galore, the
Hmm.
charisma, but behind that is an entire industry
Yeah.
I
But
mean, there's
when you say
yeah,
she's been very clever, I'm not so sure it's necessarily just been her. I think there's a whole team there that had a bit of a concept and has
that's what
been
I'm saying.
yeah. Yeah.
That she's just like a CEO
Mm,
of a pyramid.
mm,
She's at the top, but yeah, she's got everybody that can help her make money
mm.
and keep the business going because it requires a lot of people. If they're focused on making money and putting her out there as the idol of Venus, if you will, then if everything's in the right order, it'll work, and it works.
And then there's also like an archetypal storyline thing that goes along with it. And Diana followed this as well. You've got the ingenue, who then becomes the sexualized desire object, who then becomes the tortured relationship, the relationship, the maturity of going through relationship after relationship, and then the breakup songs, and then
Yeah.
like there's this whole story to it of the rejection, and then there's like getting the revenge story.
Hmm.
Yeah, like it's all this stuff that comes up with this archetype, I think, all the time, getting revenge on the man who wronged and all this kind of stuff. Like that's what I think a lot of women relate to her because of that. Like they go through a lot of those stages themselves, and she's reflected that back to them.
I was just thinking that the path can diverge at certain points, like if she decides to have children,
Mm,
or
mm-hmm,
the goddess becomes the great mother,
mm-hmm,
and then becomes the wise old woman.
mm-hmm,
If she doesn't play up the breakups and the
mm-hmm.
torture.
Well, I think the Queen Elizabeth went through the mother and elder statesman kind of
Right.
matriarch
Yeah.
kind of window. Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? But with women, it's interesting because when they're in entertainment, a lot of the time they get to a certain age or they have families, and because they can't pump out the stuff because they're busy working for their family, they get discarded, especially in this culture because it's such a youth obsessed culture. Or the next big thing comes through.
Yeah. And then if they want to come back, they're going to come in with a thread from their previous life, but they have to be resurrected. The resurrection has to be phenomenal for them to make a comeback.
Mm. Well, that's for men as well. I mean, Elvis did that, right?
Yeah, it still does.
It's fascinating the social connection to those larger than life personas. It's very powerful.
Yeah, and what my question is there a human need for gods and goddesses? And you look at all the Marvel movies, for example, those are all archetypes,
Mm.
and basically they are the gods and goddesses. You have Thor
Yep.
and Loki and Wotan and the whole Teutonic gang.
But Doctor Strange is a classic wizard kind of
Oh yeah.
figure, and Iron Man he's the metal monkey.
Okay.
Yeah, he's like the Monkey King. So like
Right.
sort of trickster, but it has the kind of the technological magic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what about Wonder Woman?
She is her thing is truth. She's the goddess of truth. She's Diana is the goddess of the moon, the original
Yeah,
Diana. But
usually a
but but
hunter.
yeah, but the lasso of truth. That's all about purity and
Yeah, yeah.
innocence and truth. Yeah, that's why I think she's in the same kind of world as Superman, because that very pure, naive kind of heroic figure, as opposed to those Marvel ones that are a bit more kind of like they're a bit more nuanced and self-referential and self-aware.
And they play with the flaws.
Yeah, they're flawed. Exactly. Yeah.
Talking about an observation, kind of ethno-anthropological, in the sense of looking at a human need to have gods and goddesses. But what happens in the general populace is not recognizing that that's what's going on. And what started this was the thought of the Swifties, Taylor Swift, goddess of beauty, dance, and songs. But the idea that she's the CEO of some massive corporation that puts her out there and she does what needs to be done to keep her audience and make billions of dollars, which we are happy to give because we idolize her. This is worship on a very basic scale.
Would you say it's the same as kind of in the ancient world where they had the gods and goddesses, and you sort of like you had your everyday people who kind of they did believe in them to an extent and they did the rituals, but then there were the philosophers who were kind of like, we know this is all pretty much a crock. We're just Like I'm just wondering whether it's sort of the same these days, where you've got, a lot of people know it's all BS, but at the same time they just enjoy the theater of it.
It's very well documented in the ancient Egyptian dynasties where the
Mm.
clerics got more and more power and became the dominant controllers of everything. The pharaoh used, just a figurehead, and the clerics ran everything. And they figured out, working with the hieroglyphics, how to write better and better and be able to write for themselves because nobody else could read it. So they had control of knowledge, and they had control of the state. And I think this goes through all, like, with all the viziers and advisors to kings and queens throughout time who could
Me,
see the play.
yeah, but maybe that's it. Maybe it is. It's it is an inevitable part of being human that these social archetypes emerge and these social movements happen. But the job of, you know an aware human being is to see your own tendency to fall for that, and to be critical and self-aware, because it's another form of naps, really, isn't it? Going with that, oh well, Taylor Swift said it, so it must be true, or Donald Trump said it, so it must be true, or my hero, I follow my hero to the ends of the earth. It's like, what if your hero is doing something wrong? Doesn't
Yeah.
matter. It's my hero. There's a point where every human being. I love. I keep coming back to Henry V with this, because I think it really, Shakespeare really deconstructed all of this in that play. And the thing he says when the soldiers are saying, "Well, look, if we end up, going to hell because he's taken us into this war, it's our fault." And he says, "No, that's not true, because every subject's duty is the king's, but every subject's soul is his own." Meaning that if you go murder somebody and say it's because the king told me to, it's still your fault. It's
But
still your choice.
yeah, but that gets very messy
Absolutely.
when you're at war. You're
Yes.
or there's a conflict of some kind, and your job, for example, is to protect the king or queen. And
It's your job, right? But do you have to, murder a baby to do that? That's the question. Where do you? I guess
where's the line?
he's saying that everybody still has a conscience, and you're doing a job, and yes, there's bigger things at play, and there's a large conflict that you're a part of or whatever. But at some point, you've got to take responsibility for your own choices, even within that situation, which I think is. I like that. I like that idea that no matter what's going on, you're still making choices.
There's like the general theme then of this and Taylor Swift, and I also think of like cult leaders. There's a
Hmm.
authority. How is it that I put my trust in someone's authority, whether
Yeah,
it's
I think
authority?
Yeah, I think you're right. It's about trust, isn't it? No,
yeah,
yeah,
it is, because if I put my belief and my trust and my confidence in a leader of some kind through some kind of a mythology connected with that leader of some kind, which we do for everybody, then I abrogate my responsibility.
yeah, and even if sometimes it can be, my sheikh told me to, like, because you can still, that can happen where, and especially you can get that wrong as well, where you think it's coming from Allah, from your sheikh, or but it's actually nafs. It's actually out of fear, or it's out of, so like any of those beliefs, no matter how pure they seem to be, can be a trap if you turn your brain off and just blindly follow. We talk about obedience and unity and all those things, and for that to happen, you need to have that trust and that surrender. Tarika, in a group or something like that. But then it's like, how do you stay part of that and have that trust in whatever group you're in, like if it's a Sufi thing, or if it's a political thing, or if it's a entertainment thing, or whatever it is, but like not get swept away from your heart's direction by the crowd or by the leader or whatever it is, and stay true. Paradox there, because also you could say, oh well, I'm just going to follow myself and my own heart and go my own way, but that's also a trap, because then you become the idol,
Yeah. Oh, there's good Sufi stories about that.
So it's like you can't really go either of those extremes. Like you can't turn your brain off and say, I'm just going to do what the leader says. But you can't also say, I'm not going to listen to anybody. I'm just going to do my own thing.
Yeah, the trick is to enter into that in an open-eyed way, an aware sense. You have to have been messed up, and you have to have experienced what that looks like for you to be aware of it. And that's the difference between like gullible or credulous or beginner, anybody who enters into spiritual stuff. That's what I've been talking about because I experienced it a lot of getting burned by spiritual groups.
When you were a noob,
Exactly. Exactly. So you have to go into them and experience it and go all the way through to find out what the truth is, or what Sheikh Tanner used to call the difference between the false and the true, or the gold.
and it becomes so abstract, doesn't it? Because nothing in this world is wholly good or wholly bad. But in in the moment, in the decision, in the truth of the moment, things can be right or wrong, for you. I'm thinking of people who are in the Catholic Church who just go, I'm just going to do whatever the Pope says. That's an easy way to solve that problem. Where's my authority? Okay, it's there. And whatever that person says, I'm going to follow that. And then you don't have to think too hard. But then, or even if you're in a relationship and it's hard to, keep your own agenda against your partner, and even though it's someone you love, you can sometimes be overridden or whatever, and then you've got to fight for it. And sometimes you can say, if it's too hard, you can say, I'm just going to do what the other person wants, or even in a friendship or anything like. But then you're still responsible.
If you don't have a moral code of some kind, things can get very fluid.
But that has to be centered on here, because if you center it out there,
Hmm.
it can run away with you. Yeah.
The other thing that is interesting is some of the choices require context. The answer is going to change depending
That's what I was getting at. Yeah.
on
You,
who
you
the
can't.
people are.
There's a good example in Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, where I think it's in the fifth one or something. A trillion alien comes down and says, "We want you to become a reporter for the galaxy." And she goes, "Okay, I'm just going to go get my bag." She goes to get her bag, and the alien's gone. And she decides that the one thing she's learned in life is that you should never go back for your bag. And then the second time comes around, something else happens. I can't remember what it is. And she says, I'm not going to go get my bag. I'm coming. And then she remembers that she needs something from her bag. So the one thing I've learned in life is that sometimes you need to go back for your bag and sometimes you don't. I've yet to learn how to discern between the two.
Yes, exactly. And we get tests like that all the time. And trying to get it right is such a challenge because there's so many variables.
Is that why, in the end, we focus so much on the direct knowledge in Sufism? Because if you're present in the moment, in the context, and you use the information you've got, but then there's that extra thing of this point in time, this place, right now, this is the thing. And that's not always obvious from here. So if you're in contact with this sharper knowledge there of how to navigate this moment.
It also clarifies. And what I'm suggesting is every during every half hour, you take like 30 seconds to check in with your heart. You go, what am I doing and why am I doing it? Why am I here? What's the point of this? Is everything okay? You go, and then you listen. You go, is everything okay? And your heart may go, yeah, it's cool. Keep on. Or it may say, you may want to check over there.
That wave that's coming up behind you,
Yeah, you may want to look.
turn around.
Yeah, because it's using senses that we don't usually use or are aware of. But I think the idea is by checking in and making it a habit every half hour, take a deep breath, check in, so that when something is needed and your heart goes, you need to step over there or cross the street now, and to be able to go, okay, because you're checking in. Whereas now, if you don't, that moment passes by and you've lost that future that may come from that. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
All right, because that's a kind of very delicate state to be able to keep the practice going of checking in with your heart. It just takes 30 seconds, just a deep breath, and then there may become a time when your heart says, "I want you to do this now," and to be able to go, "Okay," rather than arguing with it, which is our habit. Our habit is arguing with our heart. We've learned to do that because of our what we live in is not about the heart. So to be able to turn that back on, that's a tricky thing. Takes a commitment and intention to know and to want to be with your heart. For some people, that's the last thing they want to do, and that's why they do what they do.
And you got to be brave enough to let go of control, because the way the heart works, it doesn't want. You can't have, in my experience, you can't have control and be in an open heart at the same time.
I think the desire for control and power is a compensation for not being with your heart. It's like, I want, and you're going, I don't know what I want, but I want. You lost the
You even have those moments sometimes. We're like, I want a coffee. No, I want chocolate. No, maybe I want to watch a movie. No, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. I need something. And you're just like, it still takes you a while to think. You need to probably breathe, maybe have a sleep, drink a glass of water, check in, maybe
yeah, yeah.
say a astaghfirullah or bismillah, just whoo, that's what you need. But you never feel like that's what you need. You feel like, I want the things, I want the fat.
And the entire culture that we swim in is based on distracting you with your nefs. Every advertisement is tuned to your nefs in some respect. Yeah.
I have a question about that. Why do you think, and this may be something that we're not allowed to know, but why do you think we're living in this time now? Like, what's the point of that? Why is Allah kind of, I suppose I don't know if it's Allah's will or if it's just what people have done with their free will. But we're in this time where it does seem to be so encouraging of the nafs and so difficult to slow down and create and relax and love. I wonder, what are we learning as a species or as a culture? Why is it like that at the moment? Like, what are we?
It's to learn not to do this.
Yeah,
This is
makes sense.
not a good way, but we have to experience it enough to know that. The idea of throwing away plastic. This is wrong. This is stupid. Why is there so much of this? What can I do?
To fight the current like that is very hard. Like Lil and I spend a lot of time trying not to use plastic, and it just takes a lot of work because you got to prepare and plan for how you're going to avoid it, and all that kind of stuff. And you really got to be focused and committed to it, and that's energy that you can't then use for other things. And it's like it, you can't fight everything all the time. Nobody has the energy to do that. But it's like, so many things about this culture are pushing you. The current is pushing in a certain way, and you're like, how many of those hills do you want to die on? You turn off the TV, get rid of all the plastic, turn away from all the advertising. And, stop
Pick your
drinking
battle.
Coke. Yeah, get rid of all the caffeine, get rid of all, it's like there's so many things that I feel like one thing at a time you can slowly disentangle yourself, but it's
Right.
really hard.
Yeah.
It's a
And
lot of
that's
work.
okay. And that's why we are here to help. Somebody
Yeah.
needs to hold the line, as it were, to say, don't forget your heart. Don't forget we're here as we are parts of love and to help people remember that whatever way we can. You know, I try to do it with talking with you guys, but also through music and stories.
Yeah.
Love and truth really need to continue their journey. In Tibetan Buddhism, they have mudras, which are movement of the hands holding a dorje, which is like a lightning bolt, and a bell, which is compassion. You have wisdom and compassion. And what they're doing is they're doing this dance with their hands of how wisdom and compassion have to move and move back and forth. And while they're doing it, they're chanting sutras. I just find that really interesting that the idea of wisdom and compassion and that dance that happens. And that in a culture like ours, those things are really desiccated, comes to mind. It's all dried up. And what the Sufis do is kind of like trying to put water back on these poor dry things and show what it looks like, what love looks like, and what being truthful looks like, and being authentic, as they say. It's hard. But the idea of looking at the culture on a meta level, okay, to answer one of your questions, Moy, nothing has changed for the last 50,000 years. What we are in is just the same, just all teched up, but everything is
Yeah, it's
still,
just like more of it.
yes.
It's more intense or something. Yeah, yeah.
Can we amplify it more? Yeah, let's do that. Because why? Because we can.
Hey, Sheikh, I have a question for you.
Yeah,
I see humans have gone through various trials, and sometimes I wonder the human race as a whole.
has not evolved.
Oh, okay. That was a. I was going to ask it the other way, but yeah, okay. Yeah, do we learn from our mistakes, even kind of at a spiritual level, collectively, to where we
Be stupid.
won't have the same answering my own question? Yeah, we probably will.
Yeah, I don't see an evolving human race, at least in the last 10,000 years. It looks the same. I don't see change except technologically. And we're not ready for the technology.
Would you say though, like there are some positive signs? Like I don't know. To me, like if you look, say, 50 years ago, tolerance for people of other ethnicities and people of different sexualities and all that, a lot of women's rights and all that, I mean, seem to have come a long way. I mean, they had a long way to
Yeah.
come, but
Yes, yeah. So the idea of equity,
yeah, that seems to be getting a bit better
yeah.
on the surface, at least. But then it's like, then you have your Trumps and your stuff where, like, bubbling under, there's this idea of we're going to say walk the talk, but then underneath it's still the same old stuff.
Well, because that is about money and power.
Yeah.
That's not about truth or wisdom or compassion. So
Mm.
it's only interested in itself and
It's like
propagating itself.
it's like what we think we should do has gotten better, but we don't necessarily actually do it.
If you look at human civilization as just born, it's just like maybe a couple days old. It has not learned to crawl. It's not learned to talk. All it is just eating and spewing. It doesn't have any concept of right and wrong, of good and bad. There's no values. It's just, can I survive? Can I make it to the next day? I have food. And we're not good at that either. We haven't gotten to that point because there's places that are starving. We're still at war with different people. And it's just kind of like, or if you like, we can see civilization as puberty, a time of puberty, where the hormones are just nuts. I don't know. Take your pick. I don't see it as mature. I see it as barely evolving, but it's to do that. Our brain is also going to have to evolve, and that takes a lot of time.
Yeah, it's like we've got all these new tools, but we're still using the same monkey brains from 500,000 years ago.
Yeah.
And we still, so it's like, here's a computer. Oh, cool. How can I use this like for porn and to kill people? Like, no.
I can fly
You know,
drones and shoot missiles where I'm not even
no.
around.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's like, there's the power, but not the discipline to use it correctly.
The intelligence and compassion and wisdom needed for that has not evolved.
Hmm.
Do you agree, Robert?
Yes.
Do you see an evolving species here?
No.
Oh
No.
dear, I'm sorry.
And it's more along the lines of I'm framing it as mistakes that we've made in history, like huge ones, mass slaughter of people, things like that, right?
Yeah.
We'll look at what were
Happening
the
all over again.
circumstances that, yeah, and it just kept happening over and over and over again. We'll look at the circumstances that led to it. People do this deep analysis and say never again, and then it just happens all over again. I don't know if it's like a generational thing, like a few generations pass, and that's not in people's mind anymore.
Tolkien was
Yeah, it doesn't.
talking about this when he was writing the sequel to the Lord of the Rings. He started the sequel. And he got about 3 chapters of the way through, and he gave it up because he's like, inevitably like the Lord of the Rings as he wrote it ends on a high. Everybody's found their purest motives and their most heroic selves. He's like, inevitably the sequel had to deal with the decline of that because of the balance and the way that nature balances out, and that the next phase would have to be a gradual forgetting of all of those values and then having to rediscover them again. So but he got depressed writing the decline part, so he stopped, which I think is pretty funny. Like it's kind of horrible, but it's sort of there is a rhythm to it. I think like you look at history and there's these times where people do really rise up and kind of figure stuff out and consolidate their values and show their best selves, and then there's this slow sort of forgetfulness that happens and it all kind of crumbles again. And whether that's like a long-term progression or just up and down, I don't know.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. King Darius of Persia, man, that was a big empire. It was massive, and it included Egypt, just most of Asia. And then Alexander comes in with his little Macedonian group and takes them down because of the corruption, because they were broken. And so it didn't take a lot because both Alexander and Darius are arrogant and think themselves godlike and give themselves powers that they don't have or shouldn't have.
And then it repeats. The Romans took over Alexander, and then they had their decline, and they defeated themselves from within, and Germanic tribes come down, and they create the Holy Roman Empire, and then that declines, and then it just does seem to go in those cycles.
I don't see evolution per se. The brain has to change. The brain that we have is still based on survival. We just need to survive. And so we have memories built in of what helps us survive, even if it's a simple food. like something that's greasy and salty. That's was fast energy for us to remain alive. So we have
Mm.
potato chips.
Yeah. And the organism wants to reproduce, so it wants sex all the time, and it wants, it wants to survive in a social environment, so it wants power over others, and yeah, all those things.
Yeah. So the monkey brain is very much what we have to deal with all the time. And our soul is going, look, I'm not interested in pursuing that. Can you just shut up? But the brain is going, want, want, want. And oh man, it's so hard all the time. And until that can get quieter, it's going to be difficult for any civilization to override that protocol.
Do you think then that Allah's put sort of time in there as a way of, it's like almost like another humility thing, isn't it? It's like no matter how much time we spend trying to better ourselves as a race of people, there's kind of, well, no, you're still in monkey suits, and every single person still has to fight that monkey suit fight. Like it's not, we can't stand on the shoulders of the last people and have less fight to do. Except that there's some sort of tidbits and advice and signposts to help because of past efforts by some people.
If you're looking for them,
But you have to be looking for them. Yeah,
you won't see
yeah,
them if you're not looking. As Sufis, what we're trying to do is like, yes, we see the reality, the truth, the hakika of the situation. And every civilization that Sufis have been in, it's the same thing. It's corrupt. People are interested in themselves or power or sex or money. It's always going to be like that because that's our greasy hit. That's our survival mode. And it just seems to override everything. To fight it requires a whole lot of intention and commitment. And it certainly isn't supported by the civilization at large or the culture at large. The culture at large is interested in distracting you from that.
I guess that's why we need each other so much in Tarika. Hey, yeah,
Exactly.
at least there's some other people trying to be on that same path. We might be a minority, but we're doing our best together.
Exactly. Yeah. You can't do it. It's really hard to do alone. So that's one of the purposes of Tarika is knowing somebody's got your back. That we're together. We have our own separate paths, but we understand. It's hard. And to me, anybody who takes on this path, kind of like the shining knight going out there, fight against bad context and bad thinking to try and keep the heart of things alive.
Friday I was in the staff meeting at school, and this automatic racist stuff just started coming up to do with refugees, and I just stood up and I walked out because I couldn't do anything else. Like it wasn't someone who was going to listen. It wasn't, but just to make that choice. I'm not going to be part of this conversation. I'm just going to go put my energy somewhere else. That felt good.
Yeah, that sounds like the right
Yeah.
thing to do.
Like sometimes the best way to fight is just to walk away and take the air out of it. Like because he wasn't gonna, I wasn't gonna change his mind
No.
by arguing with him. So
Yeah.
yeah, but just sometimes you get overwhelmed by how ignorant and negative things can be. Yourself
That's
as well.
encouraged
And
by a lot of the culture. A lot of the
yeah,
culture is based on bringing down others. If I can bring down others or be condescending, that raises me up, maybe
yeah,
thinking,
and also I can blame them for my problems. Things like, we've got a population problem, housing crisis, lack of investment from successive governments. It's easy to say, oh, it's those people that we're bringing in, refugees. That's the problem. It's the narrative that's being put through for decades in this country, and it's just people just lap it up, and it's just and there it is, you know.
Yep.
And again,
But they,
power and all
they,
that. But
they have the same story in Australia as they have here. It's like the
yeah,
same line. It's
yeah,
all the immigrants' fault.
it's easy, and it's, you know, same thing. Hitler did blame the Jews. You know, it's all their fault. The Jews blame the Palestinians. You know, like it's just, you know, everything's somebody else's fault. So much easier. But then I guess it's then our job to go, no, I'm taking responsibility for me. This is what that looks like. This is an example of someone who's not blaming someone else.
I learned what game theory is.
Oh yeah,
It is so interesting.
it
And what it
is.
says is what survives is the one who forgives.
That's right. Yes, if you don't remember. Well, it depends. Yeah, it depends how you analyze the set of games. Yeah, but
Yeah.
yeah,
But
Are you talking about prisoner's dilemma?
yeah, but it's also, yeah, if you attack and I attack, then we attack, tack, 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 tack. If that's programmed in. But if somebody attacks and you attack, they attack, and then you forgive and you say, all right, it's okay. The whole thing changes, the game changes.
yeah, it's one of the strategies. Yeah, that can
Yeah.
disrupt it. Yeah,
It's fantastic revelation about what is possible, but in the game theory, what has happened with all throughout history is no forgiveness leads to attack, attack, attack. If, for example, Israel was attacked and said, what's the problem?
this is how we do it at school. Palestine, I can see that you're having difficulty keeping your suicide bombers inside your country. What's up with that? Well, you're keeping us locked away and blah 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 blah. You know, everything.
Discussion, yeah.
Oh, okay. Let's talk about that problem. We're doing that because of these problems. That our concern is this. Oh, okay. Well, our concern is this. Okay. I wonder if there's a way where we can address both of those concerns
And we
without killing
negotiate.
each other.
Yes. It's
Children.
like, exactly. We haven't gotten out of kindergarten yet. We haven't gotten to kindergarten.
No, it's still preschool.
Yeah. Use your word. So that's an interesting discussion. Can go on and on. But I think it's helpful to shift your perspective because sometimes things become fuzzy about what's going on. I don't understand. Why is this happening? So explaining to Alameen the swiftness of things, we have an inherent and intuitive desire to worship others who represent essences. And I just find that really culturally pans, it's every culture is involved in that, whatever it is.
I just found that really helpful to link that then with all the other tendencies we have socially and how it's on like our responsibility to get past that as individuals. You know, I appreciate that. I hadn't seen that connection before, so thank you.
Yeah. See, the reality can sometimes be on a meta state. So stepping back and looking at it culturally, ethnographically, whatever way you want to look at it. I just find it helpful because otherwise, times I get absorbed and distracted in the plethora of cultural distractions. Bismillah min ash-shaytanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillah rabbil alamin. Rahmanir rahim. Maliki yawmiddin. Iyyaka na'budu wa iyyaka nasta'in. Ihdina siratal mustaqim. Siratal ladzina an'amta alayhim. Ghayril maghdubi alayhim. Ghayril maghdubi.
Shukran, Sheikh.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Robert.
Talk to you later.
Shukran. Salaam Alaykum.
Wa alaikum assalam. Salaam Alaykum, murids, seekers, curious, and interested listeners. We appreciate you and are happy to share our Sufi message. Your donation will help support our Sufi Center in Sydney, where we do zikr, sohbet, spiritual counseling, and healing services. We believe the message should be free, but it costs equipment, rental, services, software, and hardware to get this to you. So thank you for choosing our podcast among all the millions available. If you go to our website, ansarisufiorder.org, you will be able to donate through PayPal whatever you think this information is worth to you. Blessings and love, the Australian Ansari Sufi Order.